After the Battle of Trost, Erwin quickly realized that Titan shifters had infiltrated humanity. This led to his genius plan to capture the female Titan. But how did Erwin know that the female Titan will come after Eren? The characters from the series speculate about Erwin's plan, but there is actually a lot more to it than that. To get a better understanding of Erwin's thought process, we need to look at things from his point of view. The first and most important thing Erwin would have learnt after returning to Trost would have been the fact that Eren was a Titan shifter. This was a massive discovery for humanity, and finally gave humanity a chance to score a victory against the Titans. But Erwin would have quickly identified the existence of much bigger and far-reaching implications for humanity. Because if Eren was a Titan shifter, there could be other Titan shifters as well. In Erwin's mind, the most obvious candidates for Titans that could have been potential shifters would be the Colossal and Armored Titans because of their unique size and strength, along with the fact that those two only showed up to breach the walls, and knew that the gates were the weakest parts of the walls. After this conclusion, Erwin would have wondered if the Colossal and Armored Titan shifters entered the walls and stayed with humanity during the 5 years between the fall of Shiganshina and the Battle of Trost. While it would have been theoretically possible for them to have returned to the place where they had come from outside the walls, Erwin, being the gambler that he was, would have bet on them staying within the walls to try to find out more about what humanity was up to. And after infiltrating humanity, their objective would have been to join the military to find out what it had been up to, because the military would have probably been the most knowledgeable about the Titans. By the time the Battle of Trost happened, those shifters may have already joined the military or they may have been in the training corps. Hence, the people who had joined the military after the fall of Shiganshina could be considered as suspects and cannot be easily trusted. The next thing Erwin would have noticed would have been the fact that the Colossal Titan breached the outer wall of Trost only after the Survey Corps had already left the city on their expedition, possibly to decrease humanity's chance of winning. This would have meant that the shifters who wielded the Colossal and Armored Titans must have known about the departure of the Survey Corps, which would have in turn meant that there was a high chance of them already being in Trost on that day. This would have reminded Erwin of the fact that the graduates of the training corps were already in Trost on the day of the attack, and while it may look like their presence was just a coincidence, Erwin would not have brushed it off so easily, and he would have suspected that the shifters could have been one of the trainees. The next most important thing Erwin would have been interested in would have been the fact that the Armored Titan never tried to breach Wall Rose like he did with Wall Maria. With the biggest thing that happened that day being Eren's transformation into a Titan, Erwin would have suspected that to be the reason for the Titan shifters to not go ahead with what must have been their original plan. The fact that they stopped carrying out their original plan altogether should have meant that those shifters must not have known about Eren's status as the Titan shifter, and they must have been as surprised by the transformation as humanity was. Erwin would have suspected that the shifters will come after Eren because of the fact that Eren's transformation was more important to the shifters than destroying the walls, meaning that Eren was extremely important for them. Erwin would have also suspected that the shifters would come after Eren because they would not want to let humanity discover the truth about the Titans. So Erwin would have formulated his plan around this core assumption that the shifters will come after Eren. After all of his observations following the Battle of Trost, Erwin would have already begun crafting his plan to lure out potential Titan shifters in the military. During Eren's trial, Erwin announced that he intended to use Eren and his powers to recapture Wall Maria, and requested permission for Eren to be taken on an expedition with the Survey Corps. This confirms the existence of his plan to us. However, before the expedition, the Titans that had been captured in the Battle of Trost, Sonny and Bean, were killed by someone who had reportedly used maneuver gear to escape. This would have confirmed to Erwin that Titan shifters existed within the walls, and their knowledge of how to use maneuver gear would have made him conclude that they must either be trainees or already in the military. It would have also confirmed to him that one of their goals was to prevent humanity from learning more about the Titans. This would have given Erwin more confidence in going ahead with his plan. The incident would have also increased his suspicion that the shifters might be among the trainees, since they were again there that night. After the captured Titans had been killed, Erwin had asked everyone in the Survey Corps if they knew who the enemy was. This would have been to find out who can be trusted in the Survey Corps other than the people who had joined before the fall of Wall Maria. The people who share this suspicion of the existence of Titan shifters within humanity would have probably been deemed trustworthy, since the real shifters would have just stuck to one of the two more common answers, which would either be the Titans being the enemy or the people who killed the captured Titans being the enemy, as their actions were against the best interests of humanity. And so, after he had come up with his plan, Erwin would have gathered only the people he had deemed trustworthy to discuss it. The first step of his plan was actually something that went largely unnoticed. On the day of the induction ceremony of the training corps graduates, Erwin had asked Levi to take Eren and his squad out on patrol. This would have been the first time Eren would have been taken out of the old Survey Corps headquarters that he had been kept in, thus giving the potential shifters their first opportunity to go after him. However, by providing this opportunity on the same day as the induction ceremony, Erwin's intention would have been to narrow down the list of suspects. Since the induction ceremony was a big day for all the trainees, they were all supposed to be there. If Eren was attacked by the Titan shifters on that day, and all the trainees were indeed at the induction ceremony, the trainees could be ruled out as suspects. On the other hand, if there were trainees missing from the ceremony, then Erwin would have narrowed down the list of suspects to just those trainees. And if there was no attack on Eren, that would have probably meant that it was because the shifter was at the ceremony, and it would further increase Erwin's suspicion of the new recruits. Since Eren was not attacked when he was out on patrol, Erwin's first step would have only increased his suspicion of the new recruits. At the same time, Erwin had already gone ahead with the second step of his plan by telling the trainee corps graduates that Eren was already significantly contributing to humanity's knowledge of the Titans, and let them know about the fact that there was some secret information about the Titans hidden in Eren's basement in Shiganshina. There would have been two main reasons for him to do this. First, letting the shifters know that humanity was already learning a lot about the true nature of the Titans from Eren will make them want to remove Eren from the picture as soon as possible, which is what Erwin wanted, as the Survey Corps was supposed to prove Eren's usefulness to humanity within just one expedition. Second, if the shifters are trainees or from one of the other two military branches, they will try to join the Survey Corps to come after Eren. After this, Erwin had arranged for multiple plans of the formation, each with different locations of Eren, to be handed out to the Survey Corps so that he can narrow down the list of suspects using the direction from which the shifters attack. If the shifters attacked from the right flank, he would have narrowed down the list of suspects to two groups of soldiers. The first group would be all the soldiers who were given formation plans with Eren's position in the right flank, and the second group would be all the soldiers in the right flank, as the shifters who are inside the formation can only start their attack from where they are in the formation. Since this would help them identify the shifters only after the expedition was over, Erwin had also planned a more straightforward trap for the shifters inside the forest, the one Levi was supposed to lead them to. However, this does not end up working, and the female Titan calls the pure Titans to eat her, which was something Erwin had not anticipated. While her Titan body was being eaten, Erwin had noticed that the steam coming off from her body was thick enough to affect the use of smoke signals, and remembered how the colossal Titan had vanished after destroying both the walls, which should have made him conclude that the female Titan was capable of that too, and the shifter inside it should have been able to escape with a maneuver gear, similar to how the colossal Titan's shifter had escaped after breaching the wall in Frost. Furthermore, Eren's ability to transform two more times after his first transformation in Frost would have indicated to Erwin that it could be possible for the female Titan shifter to transform again. Because of this, Erwin had asked Levi to resupply his gas and go after the female Titan shifter. However, this does not work out in the end, and the Survey Corps returned from the expedition without capturing any Titan shifter like Erwin had planned. So, in the end, they had to come up with another plan based on the information that they had gathered from the expedition. Nevertheless, with his intelligence, experience, and ability to foresee the actions of others, Erwin was able to come up with an extremely thorough and genius plan. A plan that was remarkable considering how little humanity knew about the Titans at that point in the story, and almost managed to capture one of the 9 Titans. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this.